maybe Matthew Stafford is the Carmelo Anthony of the NFL. A lot of stats, but nothing really to show for it as far as playoff resume. What do you think of that?
Wow, that's an interesting comparison. I had never thought of that before. I don't think so. I think Stafford has never really had a great team around him. I understand the comparison, and I think it's fair. But I also think he's got a ways to go in his career. But last night was rough. You're right. I mean, he was getting beat up. His interceptions were awful. It was really, really surprising because, the new head coach, Dan, we know, Matt Patricia is on the defensive side of the ball and he's changing things up. But they have the same offensive coaches. It's still Jim Bob Cooter, and they've invested so much in that offensive line. I mean, really the only bright spot for the Lions in the entire game was Kenny Golladay. Yeah. Their young receiver. He was about the only thing that they can really hold on to. That's an interesting comparison. I'm going to say no because I feel like over the last few years, Stafford has continued to get better. We'll see how this year goes. But I feel like the last 3 to 4 years, he's gotten better every year.
The Jets announced after the game that they knew the signals. They knew everything that Stafford was doing. They said they did their preparation. But how does that work? And why are you announcing that you knew what he was going to do at the line of scrimmage?
Yeah, I don't really understand that. I don't know how it works that they had such a good feel for it. It's the first game of the year, so they might have been able to spend a lot of time going over the coaching copy and the TV copy and really doing everything they could to dissect Stafford's hand signals, which, by the way, is totally legal. The only thing you can't do is you can't have a camera down on the sideline just focus on the defensive coordinator or the offensive coordinator, but you can absolutely look at the TV. I mean, I talk to coaches all the time. They have young guys on the staff. Even college, they do that. They have those guys go back over the TV copy, and even how quarterbacks are mic'd now all the time, Dan, they'll have the quarterbacks mic'd. They'll have them go back and listen to every check the guy makes, see what happens, and they've gotten very, very good at it. And it did seem like the Jets had a pretty good beat on it last night. Certainly Darren Lee, but I don't know why anybody would ever come out and say that. You don't benefit from that in any way. It's almost, as a player, Dan, it's like, why would you give the credit to the coaches? You're almost giving the credit to the coaches rather than yourself.
But, Ross, you have a whole new coaching staff. You would think you would have different signals for Matthew Stafford. Unless Stafford says to Matt Patricia, hey, these are my signals or these are my audibles or whatever. So the Jets can look at tape, but wouldn't you have a new set of signals, audibles there?
Well, maybe, but you remember, Patricia, it's interesting. When he came in, he brought in his own defensive staff, but he kept almost the whole offensive staff, including Jim Bob Cooter. So they might have said, hey, let's stick with what works. It's going well for us. And obviously that backfired. Usually teams change it up because other teams are trying to examine it, especially when there's a whole offseason. And especially also, Dan, in the NFL, there's so much movement from the players from team to team. You never know which guy that was on your team goes somewhere else. I can tell you right now, when I got cut by the Redskins and went to the Cowboys the next day on waivers, the first thing I did was sit down with Jim Jeffcoat, the D-line coach, and Mike Zimmer, the defensive coordinator, and tell them all the Redskins signals and all the audibles that I knew about. That's the first thing you do. So you better be changing them up. If you're not, you're not doing your job as a coaching staff.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.